Welcome to the Department of Political Science dedication ceremony, which we're holding to honor a lifetime of contributions from our esteemed colleague, Claude Welch. I'm Monroe Eagles. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Political Science, and it's my honor today to serve as the convener of this ceremony. We're grateful to all of you for joining us from all corners of the world. It's wonderful to see all the friends of Claude Welch who are gathered together today. Very uplifting. I know it means a lot to Claude. It certainly does to the department. So thank you for being here. I'd also like to express my gratitude to Janine McCone, who's here as well with us, and to the staff of the department for making this ceremony possible. Today we honor Claude Welch for his more than half a century of extraordinary and dedicated service to our department. Of course, Claude's career has been marked by contributions to a wide variety of communities, to the scholarly community through pioneering research, to the lives of countless thousands of students who he has touched by his brilliant and stimulating teaching. Many of whom he's formed lifelong relationships with, and some I'm looking at right now on the screen in front of me. So we're delighted that so many of you could find time to join us today. He's had distinguished service to the university, to the Buffalo community, to Chautauqua, and indeed to the whole world through his advocacy and research on human rights. So much to celebrate in this career of Claude Welch. However, it's been the Department of Political Science at UB who has been, that has provided the centerpiece of Claude's academic career and the strongest object of his academic identity. We, more than any other group, have benefited from Claude's passion and his talent and his hard work. With this dedication ceremony, then, we acknowledge our debt to Claude for decades of dedicated service and extraordinary professional accomplishment. Claude came to the department in 1964, 1 year after it was founded. So he was virtually present almost from the birth of this department. And he's been a part of all of the growing pains and the wonderful accomplishments that this department has racked up over the years. And I can honestly say that the department is immeasurably stronger for his many contributions. So our time today is tight. We've had an overwhelming response to the invitation to Claude's many friends, associates, former students, and even a family member. So I'm not going to try to rehearse his CV and to remind us of all the many contributions that Claude's made over the years. I'm going to leave that for many of you and your comments later on in the ceremony. But it would be remiss of me not to take a moment at least to acknowledge that this event is personal for me as well. When I arrived at UB in 1989, in the fall of '89, as a junior assistant professor in comparative politics, Claude was the senior comparativist on the faculty. I have benefited throughout my career at UB from constant mentoring, support, friendship of Claude. And it hasn't stopped since he formally retired in 2017. In fact, in the last 3 years, I've had the pleasure of serving as chair, and I can only say that his mentorship has intensified, if anything, in his retirement. I continue to turn to Claude for counsel and advice. He in turn provides me with a continuous stream of ideas and suggestions to improve the department. I'm profoundly personally grateful to Claude for years of mentorship and friendship and support. So this is a personal event for me as well as a department celebration. As we honor Claude's many contributions today, one particular service to the department deserves special mention. Claude is in the process of crossing the T's and dotting the I's on a history of the department. This is a document that only he could produce. And in doing so, he's ensured that as a proud department of dedicated professionals, We and all those who follow us will know where we came from and how we developed into the excellent program in political science that we are today. You can find the bulk of Claude's work on the history on the department website, and we encourage you to read it at your leisure. And for graduates of the department, we encourage you to contribute your reflections on your time here. Claude has generously provided a space at the end of this document where those of you who have passed through our program are encouraged to reflect on your time with us. Claude, on behalf of my colleagues, past, present, and future, let me express our enduring gratitude for taking on this important task. We will, of course, be proudly including this, a bound copy of this important book in the Claude Welch Library and Seminar Room when it's completed. For this and so much more, Claude, we owe you our sincerest gratitude and our deepest respect. To begin the program, I would like to turn to a friend and colleague, Frank Zagari, long-serving chair and UB distinguished professor, to say a few words on behalf of the department of Claude's contribution. Frank, over to you.
Thanks, Monroe. How do you introduce someone who doesn't need an introduction? I could talk about Claude's longevity. Rumor has it that Claude actually joined the department during the Lincoln administration. And I think that's possibly the reason that he bears a striking resemblance to the rail splitter. Of course, you already know that. Or I could point out that Claude has published countless books and scores of book chapters and book reviews and so on. But you already know that too. I could point out that Claude is a distinguished service professor who has served not only as the department chair, but in a host of administrative positions at both the university and college level. And you know that. Or I could tell you that Claude's former students believe that he walks on water, but a few of them are going to attest to that fact in just a few moments. So rather than mention Claude's longevity, his extensive and distinguished publication, teaching, and service record, I'd like to tell you what Claude means to me, and I'm sure to both the former and present members of the department. Perhaps the best way to do this is to tell you what I told Claude just a few weeks before he departed for greener fields. Oftentimes when I was visiting my mother for a few days in Brooklyn, New York, several hours would pass without either one of us speaking to the other. And I never really felt guilty about that. As I told my mother at the time, simply sharing space with her was all the emotional sustenance that I needed. During those visits, all seemed well with the world. It was pretty much the same thing with Claude. On my teaching days, I would get to my office on the 5th floor very early to go over my notes and make sure that I was fully prepared for class. On a regular and predictable basis, my eyes would catch Claude on his way either to the copy room or the lunchroom. When this happened, as when I visited my mother, I felt reassured that the earth was still spinning on its axis and that things were the way that they were supposed to be. Regular order had prevailed, at least for that moment. I don't know what life is going to be like in the department when we all get back to in-person teaching. But I do know that things won't be the same, that something, actually someone important, will be missing. And I know, Claude, that you are and will continue to be missed. I also hope and expect that the room that we're dedicating in your honor today will, when the world seems topsy-turvy, remind us not only the good times, but also how things ought to be. So on behalf of everyone here today, I wish you health, continued longevity, and a very, very enjoyable retirement.
Thank you, Frank. Those are warm sentiments, and I know we all share them, Claude. It's really impossible to overstate your contributions and the gap that you'll leave. At this point in the program, though, we'd like to get the formal business behind us and to actually make the dedication. So in doing this, I'm assisted by Janine McCown, who is in 502 Park Hall with Pam Menschel. And I will turn it over to her in just a minute because
Gotta scan first. Oops, sorry.
Okay,
We're gonna take a little scan of the room. So
good.
you haven't seen it in a while or before?
Some of you would have passed through these department programs before we were in Park Hall, so this is helpful to set the scene. This is 502 Park Hall.
Okay.
Thank you, Janine. For the benefit of those who aren't familiar with our current physical home, I should note that 502 Park Hall is located at the very nerve center of our department's professional life. It's located in the main suite of faculty offices and administrative offices on the 5th floor of Park Hall. We make constant use of this room. It's where we hold our graduate seminars, where we host visiting scholars, where we hold our department meetings, where we gather to celebrate events like Claude's 80th birthday recently, not so far in the past. So naming it in Claude's honor ensures that he will forever be among us at crucial points in the department's future, even if as he's been with us through virtually every crucial point in the history of the department. So we have a little plaque that you can see on the wall directly outside the seminar room. And if we could have an unveiling now of the plaque that will stay there permanently. That's great. If you could zoom in on that a little further, Pam. Thank you. There it is. So to do the formal business of the day, it's my honor to dedicate 502, in the name of the Department of Political Science, to dedicate 502 Park Hall in honor of SUNY Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus Claude Welch. From this point on, the room will be known as the Claude Welch Library and Seminar Room, as an enduring recognition of our gratitude to him for his distinguished and untiring service to the department and our mission. Thank you, Claude.
Thank you so much, Monroe. It's a very, very special day for me. Thank you so much, Janine and Pam. I'd like to raise a glass to you in recognition of the incredible strengths that you and Mary bring to the Department of Political Science. You're most welcome, Janine. And I look forward to seeing you guys. If any of you will be on campus, let's say from July 20th to July 23rd, because I will be back in Buffalo looking up and being with old friends, having a drink. Yeah, I know this is only cider, but I do drink harder stuff than that. So it will be fun, and it will be a great pleasure to be with you. I started in the department a long time ago, and I was wondering in those pictures, who was the guy that didn't have a big bald spot on the back of his head and an ever-increasing forehead? He didn't have a beard at one point. Oh, Lordy, that was a long time ago. And actually, I had the honor of arriving in 1964, as Monroe said. I have lived a history, and one who will speak later, my esteemed colleague, SUNY Distinguished Teaching Professor Jack Meacham, was the one who encouraged me to write the history that is available and to which Monroe alluded. But I would also like to recognize the first and among the most recent. Lau Goel, I sincerely hope that you have tuned in to this. Lau was the first PhD from the department, wrote an excellent dissertation, I'm in touch with him from time to time. I bet the grass is greener a little there in Florida, Lal, than it is in our wintry beauty as I look out my window. And Sarah Norby, if you are tuned in as well, congratulations on receiving your PhD. I'm so sorry that I was not able to participate in the hooding for you at the most recent graduate commencement. But I'd like to give special recognition to Jihyun Lee and to Abigail Matthews, the two newest members of our department, women with stellar academic records. I certainly hope to meet you, not during the summer. There are other things that everyone must do, but perhaps during the fall or next spring. So I suppose I should get a little formal now. So pardon me, watchers, listeners, and ye holy ones, because I'd like to switch modes and become a didactic professor type. Honored attendees, Chairman Eagles, distinguished speakers, those who are watching us on the small screen. And I'd like to give a special greeting to the esteemed Senator Edward Everett. I tip my hat to you, Senator Everett. 217 years ago, our colleagues brought forth in this university a new department conceived in excellence and dedicated to the proposition that we can achieve and have achieved national recognition. We're now engaged in a new dedication. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. The world may little note nor long remember what I say here today, but they never forget what you said and what you did. That's the end of the formal speech, guys. We're not hallowing, we're not sanctifying, we're not consecrating a sprawling battlefield. We're naming a room. But as Monroe so nicely expressed, it is the heart, the center, the brain of the department. I miss you, Buffalo. I miss you, colleagues, former students, and especially friends. I wish I was teaching. This remote teaching, that's tough. And I really admire the quick and expert adaptation that you made. And thank you for allowing me to tune in. Thank you, Rachel, in particular. I won't miss the grading. Who does? But now here in the Boston area, I want to open up my invitation to anyone who comes to visit friends, relatives, or just wants to drop in. The meal's on me, or if you prefer coffee or maybe a drink, that's fine as well. To name just a few, I look forward to seeing Fred Flaron again. He's only, what, Fred, 70 miles west or so? And he can easily board the bus and I'll get on the train and we'll meet at South Station or someplace like that, wherever. Josh, Dick, Nanette Coleman, Mary Chun's, is that still open? It's looking for some dum-dum noodles again. Emil Carburetto, you're there on the Green Line too. It's a long, long time since you wrote that wonderful dissertation on bilingualism in, no, not Puerto Rico, Quebec. How about Annika and Hagley and your new baby? Thank you so much for sharing the pictures on Facebook. That would be great. Hey, Jim Campbell, of course. You're an institution, especially a person who has brought so much humor to the department. I loved our discussions, though our political points of view weren't exactly the same. It was always stimulating to be with you. It will be stimulating in the future. And Jake Nieheisel, keep up the good arguments. So, as I said before, I'm coming back to Buffalo. I'll be there in July on my way to Chicago, I almost said. No, Chautauqua. I do know how to spell that, fortunately. And let me end up with reinforcing what Monroe had to say at the start. The department website is open to the world, but the invitation is an open one to you. Please share your recollections of your time at Buffalo. You don't have to say anything at all about me. You don't have to study with me. I bet there are lots of folks in IR, in American, and indeed in the empirical side of political science that I never learned, although I struggled manfully in Laurie Rodebeck's course, one of those that I audited. Please, please take advantage of this opportunity. Get in touch with Monroe and or with me. Maybe best of all, write or call both of us. I know we'd love communications. We both have cell phones. We both have emails, as all of you do. So guys, to you, to the speakers that will follow, but most appropriately to everyone who is part of the wider UB community. I love you, I miss you, and I will see you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Claude, so much. You were equally missed by all of us as you find yourself missing us. So it is entirely reciprocal. But getting together today is a wonderful way to rekindle these relationships and make sure that they carry on. At this point, we're about to turn over to some of Claude's friends and former students and to hear their remarks and reflections. Claude, you've touched so many lives during your more than a half century with us at UB. We've had an overwhelming response to our invitation to participate, and I'm thrilled for that. And I thank all of you who are about to speak. For those of you who would prefer not to publicly speak, I would encourage you to use the chat function on Zoom at the bottom of the screen to contribute your remarks. We will be collecting those and saving them for Claude, so that he'll be able to appreciate and enjoy your remarks that way as well. In the interest of time, we've asked our contributors today to be as brief as possible so that we can hear everyone and hear from everyone. So I'll also ask that they, at some point in their remarks, outline their connection to Claude and how they know him and not just how they remember him. And I've finally asked them to pass the baton to the next speaker. So some of you, I hope, will have had a chance to look at the program for today. And if you do, you'll see that we've listed the speakers in alphabetical order. And I would propose that we take them in that order. And we've had a couple of late contributors as well. So at the end, after TY has completed his remarks, I'll turn to include some other people who were late, who became aware of the program after it was already written up. So without further ado, thank you, Claude, for those wonderful remarks, warm remarks. Can I turn to Amilcar Barreto, please, to start us off on our trip down memory lane here. So Amilcar.
No, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I always ask because 21st century technology and I are not exactly the best of friends. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Monroe in particular, thank you for the opportunity to share a few words about my former professor and mentor, Claude Welch. As you're aware, at the start of this month, we had a coup in Myanmar. Coups are well known for their violent rupture of the status quo, and some are known for being rather bloody affairs. But this one became particularly noteworthy because of news footage of a fitness instructor shooting an exercise video while the military vehicles rushed by her on their way to take over the parliament. And as I was watching this, nostalgia brought me back to civil-military relations and the course I took with Professor Welch. That was a couple of years ago. But in addition, he also kindly asked me to serve as his editorial assistant in Armed Forces and Society. So I can still remember sitting with my peers in Park Hall, and there was Claude at the head of the table, and speaking rather casually about coups, not dismissively, but calmly. They were just another facet of political life. and it was a phenomenon worth studying. Although I intentionally enrolled in this course knowing what we would be studying, I still felt a little uneasy about openly talking about such a violent phenomenon, and I can still recall the utter shock and horror on my roommate's face, a chemical engineering major from Mumbai, who saw on my desk a copy of our assigned book, Edward Luttwak's Coup d'etat, a practical handbook. There was our Professor Welch in the conference room, in a very relaxed voice saying, yes, we're going to study a very controversial topic. Just because a phenomenon is controversial, there's no reason to avoid studying it, let alone talking about it. And then there's no reason to get agitated. As scholars, that's our mission. So this episode, brief as it was, this blast from the past, represent one of the many unexpected ways that Claude Welch left a lasting impression on his students. For someone like myself who studies nationalism, adopting this mindset has been imperative. And it's helped me on more than one occasion diffuse very heated classroom outbursts. This is the same Claude Welch who served as a classroom role model, was also a research cheerleader. At the time I completed my dissertation, I was a tenure track faculty at an institution that didn't care about research, and he encouraged me, keep going. Lo and behold, it became my first book. So words cannot adequately express the gratitude I feel for Claude Welch, our instructor, advisor, academic role model, tireless supporter. Many, many thanks. Cheers. And as soon as we get the vaccine, I look forward to meeting you at a lovely Boston area restaurant.
I think I'm up next. Barbara
Yes.
Bono.
Yes, thanks, Barbara.
And my husband, Jim. We're recently emeriti from UB, Jim from history, me from English and global gender studies. Hi, Claude. It's wonderful to be here to celebrate you and to see so many old friends. It's been my privilege over the years that I've been at UB to play tag team with Claude an awful lot, and with his late wife, Jeanette, whom I love dearly as well. Claude, as people will tell you, of course, is a world scholar, world human rights advocate, very attentive to excellence and diversity wherever he finds them. I want to speak mostly for his love of those qualities for our undergraduate student body. 4 moments I can think of. One is the general education program that was put in place here in the late 1980s, and Claude's advocacy there, particularly for the 2-semester World Civilization course. He was one of several faculty members who not only designed and embraced that course, but if you can believe it, could teach both parts of that course. And it was amazing. And I see Tom Hedrick on here. I see Jack Meacham on here. Claude invoked Fred Flaron. It was the basis for my really believing that we were part of a university and that we were really invested in undergraduate education in the broadest and deepest sense of the word. A number of things were very prescient in that curriculum that was developed at that time, and Claude was at the center of it. Claude found out by figuring out what my maiden name was, that I was elected to Phi Beta Kappa in my undergraduate school. He winkled me out and arranged that I succeeded him as president of the chapter. As a result, when I cleaned my office out in July, I cleaned out over 50 years of Phi Beta Kappa records for Claude and cooked them down for the university archives. So Claude continuously, and Jeanette as well, forwarded that form of excellence in undergraduate education here at UB, including late in his career here when the two of them went and taught at our Singapore campus, advocating for the inclusion of those students in our Phi Beta Kappa chapter, really quite revolutionary in the history of that organization, and making sure that they ran an induction ceremony there. They were always advocates for excellence in our honors college. I think a few people will speak to that, but they were particularly foundational with the advanced honors college program, which allowed students who weren't admitted to the program at the point of entry in UB because they were transfers, because they were internationals, because they didn't know about it, because they were late bloomers, to enter and take advantage of the fabulous resources of that program. They also were very important in the academies, a kind of parallel program there. And there we played a little tag team as well. Their wonderful collection of photographs of their international travels are a gift to the university and appear periodically in the seminar rooms for our undergraduates and in the library. Thank you so much for that. We all look forward to more travel. We plan to visit you, Claude, and we hope you'll visit us. I remember your 25th wedding anniversary. I remember your backyard parties. We'll do those things again. And finally, probably many of you know, but maybe some of you don't, that Claude always continued to take 3 or 4 classes a semester to complete his education. As he said, he would show up at our classes. He would pester me about what were good classes in the English department. He'd be on the Buffalo film seminars all the time. He wanted to do a course with me on, of all things, war, right? The Pacific Claude, but and we didn't get to do that. But there are ways to teach in retirement, Claude, and I think you're going to find out how to do them. And of course, you're going to complete that very important department history and continue writing. Here's to Claude. And now, is Claudio Cioffi out there? And if not, William Dutton is up next. So Claudio or William?
Thank you. I'm Claudio Cioffi, and I studied with Claude as one of my principal foundational faculty teachers at Buffalo many decades ago. Principal advisor was Glenn Snyder, but I was very fond of courses that I took with Claude. One, the first being the introduction to comparative politics. And as a foreign student from Italy, I really appreciated his attention to cosmopolitan perspectives and really the foundations and principles of comparative analysis. I had begun to study comparative politics in Florence, but it wasn't until it was in Claude's seminar that I really was able to understand the concepts and theories, principles of comparative politics to a degree that I continue to use for the professional career. I also remember very well the course on civil military and the profound, the profound influence that Sam Huntington's work had in a lot of my subsequent work. As I taught in a number of universities, I remembered Claude on many, many occasions. But the first use I
Claudio, I'm sorry, I think you're frozen on us. Well, I'm sorry for that. Folks, we'll give Claudio just a minute and hope that the connection gets restored. Life in the COVID age. These are things that we sadly have to get used to. But Claudio, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm going to send him a note on the. Okay, he knows, so that's good. So let's see if he can rejoin us. Thanks for your patience, folks. Well, I'm not sure if he's able to rejoin us, so perhaps maybe it's prudent that we go ahead with you, Bill Dutton, if you're prepared, and then we can come back to Claudio if he's able to reestablish. Is that okay? Over to you, Bill. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Monroe. I'm happy to yield if he's able to return. Right, Claude, congratulations. I arrived on the Ridgely campus in 1969, about 4 or 5 years after you arrived. And I was at the height of the student unrest and around the Vietnam War, and which you covered so brilliantly in your history. I ended up on the empirical side, as you call it, and a student of Les Milbras, but I always admired you so much, and as one of the young role models within the university and within the department. I never set foot on the Amherst campus. Someday I'm going to get back to Buffalo and see the Amherst campus, but Ridgely campus was very good to me, and particularly the faculty that I had there. All my memories are of them. I ended up at Oxford University, where I'm speaking from now in Oxford, and I was the first professor of internet studies there, and it turns out I really didn't know that I would be interested and focused on human rights so much, but as in internet studies, of course, human rights are critical, and the next time you teach an online course, or when you teach an online course on human rights, today, Claude, maybe I can join your course, like Barbara suggests that we continue to take classes. But because I'm sort of semi-retired now, I wrote a blog, as one does, to thank my professors at UB now. It was SUNY Buffalo when I was there. And calling out some of the people I had studied with and so forth. And I got an email from Claude, of course, and he was very gracious and helpful, and he sent me his history, and which is brilliant, and he also edited my blog, and I got all the red line editing of my blog, and I mean, how great of a teacher is that? I mean, that's what you do, and I just really valued that, and it just struck me as so symbolic of a great teacher. So I'm not surprised at all by the awards that he is getting. His history of the department was wonderful. It struck me that even though I always wondered about the history of SUNY Buffalo, and you never follow it. I mean, you're there, you're a student at a university, and you capture what's going on there, but very few people take a look at the early history and the later. Of course, at Oxford, that's all they do. It's like the history, but at most other universities, there's not that kind of historical and future and how it evolved. And I always wondered what happened, what was going on with you guys, and Claude brought it all to me. But I think that this award is so great. I mean, it's such an incredible award you're giving, Claude, because when I think it's, what we value about a university that we've gone to is who we studied with, the teachers and the other students we were with when we were there. And they've served me very well throughout my life. And so I think that, this kind of award for doing what you have with students, I think is perhaps one of the best awards that a university might give. On a lighter note, I think the only thing that hasn't been mentioned is that you might be the most photogenic and perhaps the most photographed professor I've ever known in my life as well. But I congratulations, and I add my admiration to all the others, and I wish I had taken more classes with you, and hope to follow you in the future. Thank you. And the next person is Im Lao Go.
Yes, and if I could just interrupt to let us all know that Claudio has been able to reestablish his connection.
Okay.
So let me ask that we return to Claudio so thanks, Bill, for setting up the next speaker. But in this event, Claudio, if you can hear me, we're back to you.
Thank you. You're very, Monroe, very gracious of you. I'll use up the balance of my 2.2 minutes left because there are really, seriously, there are a couple of very important things I wish to mention. Number one is that the comparative methodology and really the whole philosophy of comparative analysis was something that I picked up and developed really deeply with the teachings of Claude. And then I used it in many, many fields. I began using it in IR, in doing comparative analysis of international systems. I then used it with different kinds of mathematical models in comparing their structures and their various applications. I used it with teaching the origins of civilization in a seminar that I taught for over 25 years. This was a course on the origins of government, how the first governments in the most ancient parts of political history occurred in the Middle East, in China, in South America, and Mesoamerica, and so forth. All those courses were comparative, always. The other thing that really I learned from Claude that was a very rare teaching was the practice of method for a seminar. And the idea and the attitudes of the whole ambiance of a Socratic class stuck with me, and I practiced it on several of the courses that I taught. Some of them would lend themselves to the Socratic method more than others, but I did use that as well. And every time I did that, of course, I always remembered him. These days, I'm doing something different in retirement. I'm doing something that I always wanted to do, and I couldn't get around to doing it while I was still teaching until 2 years ago. And it's a mathematical problem that I discovered a few years ago, and I'm trying to solve it with the new, building a new little branch of mathematics on so-called hybrid functions. And in this area, you have to develop a series of mathematical operators. For example, differentiation is an operation, integration is another, and so forth. This is a vector operator that works on surfaces to figure out gradients and so forth. And what I'm doing now is I'm working on a chapter on the comparison between different types of these operators, which is a fairly sophisticated and exotic mathematical field. It's really applied math, it's not pure mathematics. But again, every time I work on this, I remember Claude's seminars and teachings. So thank you for a long time, lifelong gifts that you gave all your students. And I was very fortunate to be one of those recipients. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Claudio. Now we can turn to Madame Guel.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. I go by my middle name, Lal Goel, even though my first name is Madan, M-A-D-A-N. I'm so very pleased to participate in this, and thank you, Monroe, for putting it together. I am part of the foundational graduate student body, having joined UB Political Science in 1963. I think we were a small group of students at that time, I think only about 8 or 10, pursuing the doctoral program. And of course, some students dropped out with the master's degree. And the faculty was also small in that time period. I think only about 8 or 10 faculty members, including Roy McCreadus, John Walkie, Dr. Richard Cox, and of course, Claude Welch, who joined the faculty, as it has been mentioned, in 1964. And one of the things I like to say is about the progeny, the students that came out of the program, the beginning class. In my group, I think most of us have done well. I'll just mention only 3, 4 names. For example, Dr. James Hattois, who has served as the president of a 2-year and a 4-year college in the states of Idaho, I think Oregon, and certainly in California. Also, Stephen Puro at St. Louis University, a professor emeritus in political science, much sought after speaker and a writer. And then, of course, we had others like Peter Gluck and a couple of my fellow students in Canada, like Dale Postgate and Tom Lewis, and in Germany, Bridget Kelm. So if you want to say something good about the parentage, then you have to look at the children, the progeny. I would say the progeny of the early years has done very, very well, including myself. I have published 5 books, and I was promoted to the rank of full professor, I would say ahead of my colleagues by a dozen years. And I was honored with the Distinguished Teaching Award, which is given only to one faculty in the college 1 year. So I've done well, and thank you for the UB faculty, and above all, Dr. Claude Welch, who was my mentor and my professor. I also like to say that in the early years, there was not the gap between the graduate student body and the faculty. We were, like a family. We socialized together. I remember being invited, as other graduate students were, to a number of faculty functions, social functions at their home. And on occasion, we graduate students reciprocated. And I recall very fondly, for example, my wife and myself inviting Dr. Claude Welch and his then wife, Nancy, to our home for Indian chow, and very graciously accepted. And they came with the two toddlers in tow. It was just a very special occasion. And I remember his first wife, Nancy. She was slim, tall, just a beautiful woman. So if you measure the caliber of a man winning a wife like that, my hats off to Claude Welch. During the evening, I just kept on staring at Nancy. She was so beautiful and so graceful. So that's another wonderful memory that I have about my years over there. Now, I also like to say that in the early years, I lost my thought here a little bit. So I want to recognize Dr. Claude Welch for teaching me well. The reason I have done it as well in my academic career is because the training and the education that I received with people like Lester Milbrath and Richard Cox, Robert Stern, but above all, Dr. Claude Welch, because I hold him in very high regard. And he and I had been in touch with each other some 10 years ago. I visited the UB campus. And of course, I came to political science, and Dr. Claude Welch was there. And he was gracious enough to spend time with me, and we had lunch together. That just shows the regard that he has for his former students. I want to thank Dr. Claude Welch. I love you, Claude. I salute you, and I hold you in high regard. With those words, I pass the baton on to the next speaker, Dr. Zhu.
Namaste, Lao.
Thank you, Claude.
Hi, Dr. Welch. Hi, Dr. Welch.
Hi.
Do you remember me?
Of course I do. Come
Oh,
on.
that's great.
Jenny, I should say, right?
Yeah, it's a Chun Hee. Okay. it was in 1977 that I came to Buffalo, right after graduating from Seoul National University. And when I came here, it's like, it's a foreign land. I didn't speak any English. I was sitting in the class. I didn't hear any English. And it was just very difficult to be a foreign student in a foreign land. But Dr. Welch, among all the professors, he was a very warm-hearted person. What I can say about Dr. Welch is that he's a warm-hearted professor who cared very much about foreign students. And he understood that we had a language problem, and he was also telling other professors, that they should understand how hard it is for foreign students to learn in foreign language. And, he taught not only with his intelligence, not only academics, but I think he also taught with his heart. And I think that's what influenced me when I became a professor. And I really appreciate that. I remember that Dr. Welch invited us foreign students to his home during Thanksgiving. And I also remember his beautiful daughters and beautiful home, beautiful Thanksgiving. I became an overseas student advisor in a Korean university later on. And I was very nice to these, foreign students from like 40 Asian countries. And it's like what I learned from Dr. Welch, how to be nice to strangers in a foreign land. I really appreciate that. And also he had a great academic influence on me. I was interested in human rights, but my interest in human rights and military civil relations developed even further thanks to Dr. Welch. And he also suggested my PhD dissertation idea as well. At the time, there was the International Conference of Women, and he said, how about writing about NGO, the role of NGO in at the United Nations, because my major was international organizations. So, I started writing about NGO, and he redlined my dissertation, corrected my English. My English improved so much. My English improved so much because I read all his corrections. My English improved, and that was so nice. That he read through my dissertation. I got my PhD in 1984, and right after that, I was offered a job at Gustavus Adolphus University in Minnesota, and then I taught at Emory University, and I was teaching comparative human rights, and my interest in human rights went on. This is all thanks to Dr. Welch. I was so fortunate to meet Dr. Welch. He's such a warm and kind-hearted person. And then I went back to Korea, and I taught, I was a very happy professor. I taught at the International School of Seoul National University, and I was teaching refugee problems and human rights issues. So, I owe so much to Dr. Welch. And then because I studied in NGO, I also became president of several NGOs that are active in human rights field at the global level these days as well. So, Dr. Welch, I thank you so much for the good influence you had on my life. I hope you will live long and happy, and I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm next. I just want to say good afternoon, and it is truly an honor to be with all of you today. My name is Aaron Krolikowski, and like all of us here, I have been profoundly shaped by the words, teachings, and mentorship of Professor Claude Welch. I first met Claude in 2006, participating in an honors seminar on African politics through film and literature. The course made an impression, and I found myself traveling to Northwest Tanzania in 2007 on an independent research project for which Dr. Welch graciously agreed to act as my faculty sponsor. And it was on this research trip that I first came to a deeper understanding of the human right to water. And later that year, I would again join a course led by Claude, a graduate seminar on African politics that took place in 502 Park, the seminar room that we're dedicating today. Dr. Welch's influence on my life would only grow from there as I followed in his footsteps, pursuing a DPhil at the University of Oxford. And even more, that path was supposed to take me to St. Anthony's College, Claude's alma mater. But at the last minute, I was reallocated to Green Templeton, a college just across the street on Woodstock Road. My doctoral research and field work found me again and extensively working on the human right to water in East Africa. But as my own education unfolded, the realities of human rights in the world hit me head on. Maurice Mjomba was a good friend and leading activist for LGBT rights, working for the dignity of those living with HIV in Tanzania. But much to my sadness, Maurice was murdered in 2012, a crime that went unanswered by the government. The injustices continued in the following years with the 2013 introduction and 2015 passage of Tanzania's Statistics Act, a law that criminalized my research, excuse me, as well as the work of many of my friends and colleagues. I was directly subjected to this oppression, being detained by the Tanzanian military and immigration officials on multiple occasions, which required the intervention of the US Embassy in Dar es Salaam. Eventually, I returned to Buffalo, and Claude was there to remind me of the many opportunities that still awaited me in life. It was a difficult time, and I will always remember and value our meetings over coffee in the Alfiero Center, steps away from Park Hall. Since then, my work has turned to the human right to information, both here in the US and abroad. And back in a more secure and open society, from the beautiful city of Buffalo, a city we both love very much, my work continues to proudly weave the threads of Claude's teachings, helping to build open governments in New York and Nevada, and regularly reviewing scholarship coming out of Africa's growing academic institutions and civil societies. Professor Claude Welch has indeed been a monumental force in my own life and in the lives and the work of the thousands of students he has connected with over his long and illustrious career. And I can think of no one more fit for an honor as this, as it is my sincere hope that the spirit of his perspective continues to mold, shape, and inspire the students that study and learn in 502 Park. So thank you, Claude, for all that you've done for me during my life. You truly are an inspiration, and the fire of your teachings continue to burn brightly in the darkness of an unjust world, lighting the way for a more radiant future for all of us. We are all forever in your debt. And with that, I will hand the baton to Dr. Gulai Leo, a professor of political science in Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, so much. We'll see you in Buffalo in the not too distant future.
Most definitely. I've marked down July 20th through the 23rd. We look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello, everyone. It's such a great joy for me to participate in this dedication ceremony in honor of great Professor Welch. It's a true honor and joy to celebrate. Professor Welch has such a profound influence on me and so many of my fellow students. We're very, very grateful. I came to UB in 1987 as a new PhD student, a new student with a very little background in political science. As everyone knows, China did not have a political science as a discipline before the 1980s. So when I arrived in Buffalo, I knew very little about the political science. Professor Welch introduced me to the field of political science with a special emphasis on African politics, political development, modernization, and politics of developing countries. I remember the seminars we took with Professor Welch. They were always interesting, dynamic. We always have a great discussion and a debate in those seminars. And Professor Welch also guided my independent study. And I wrote my first major research paper in political science and Nkrumah's struggle for independence in the Gold Coast. And for every paper that I wrote, Professor Welch always provided very thoughtful, very timely comments and suggestions. This included all the papers that I wrote. And every time I gave Professor Welch something that I have written, no matter how busy he is, he always giving me feedback in a very timely way. I know Professor Welch is extraordinarily busy. He was teaching graduate seminar, undergraduate class, and he was editing Armed Forces Society. But no matter how busy he was, he always found the time for students. So I often met with Professor Welch on a weekly basis. Even during summertime, Professor Welch was also guiding my independent study about the comparison of modernization in Africa and Japan, about the changes, social political changes in Eastern Europe, in Asia, and all those helped me enormously for my growth, both in terms of study and research. Now I'd like to mention one thing that's very special. My good friend, Chiwa Wang, told me that Professor Welch was teaching a wonderful class on politics of developing countries. I asked Professor Welch, may I attend the class? Professor Welch said, of course. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I would go to Professor Welch's class on those developing countries. It's such a huge topic, but Professor Welch taught it in such an effective way that every single day we felt we learned so much. So what I remember the most about Professor Welch is his deep love for students and true compassion for humanity in general and for students in particular. Professor Welch's teaching has such a profound impact on me and my students, and we're grateful for a long, long time to come. Congratulations, Dr. Welch. You're very welcome to come to visit Charleston anytime when you have time, okay? And the same invitations for all my teachers in Buffalo and all my fellow students. Thank you, Dr. Welch.
I accept the invitation. Shia.
And our next speaker is Professor Jack Matcham.
Well, this is embarrassing. Everyone is praising Claude Welch. My name is Jack Meacham. I came prepared to praise the new library and seminar room. So I should just move ahead. We all had personal libraries as students, highly selected, narrowly focused. Novels we didn't enjoy, banished. Ideas we didn't agree with, banished. But the library for an entire department, wows, can be chaotic and energized, inscrutable, yet seductively comprehensible. I'm imagining what might happen late at night after the last untenured professor has turned off the lights and left Park Hall. A scene out of the movie Toy Story. The authors come alive and proclaim, posture, and provoke. Hannah Arendt and Jürgen Habermas, Amy Gutmann and Ho Chi Minh. I believe this is how Claude assembled his lifelong library, not by what comfortably fit in, but by which ideas were still missing, unusual, and discordant. A quest for an appreciation of the other, a cabinet of curiosities, and putting these authors into dialogue and debate. So witness Claude's library as reflected in his courses, Africa through novels and films, women's and men's language, NGOs and conflict resolution, China's rising power. Let me turn now to the seminar room. The root meaning is semen or seed. A seminar is a seed plot or a plant nursery. When I was a junior faculty member, Claude inspired me, and I believe many others, to commit to all three of our responsibilities: scholarship, teaching, and also equally university service. So I point to Claude directing faculty development workshops and programs for non-tenured faculty for many years. And Claude served as chair of our faculty senate not once but twice, and on the executive committee for 13 years, and as chair of numerous other committees. Claude and I worked together in the 1980s, revising UB's general education requirements. Claude was the key person steering the innovative world history, multiculturalism and diversity, and breadth requirements through our faculty senate. Let me sum up. The Claude Welch Library, not a depository, not a memorial, instead reaching out for the other, discovering and advocating for ideas that aren't yet included, bringing them into dialogue and debate. The goal for Claude has always been the sharing of ideas, the coming together, exchanging viewpoints, the companionship, the sense of community. A library should be a room full of love for the other. And the Claude Welch seed plot, plant nursery, and seminar room, a tribute to his energy, commitment, and investment in UB students and faculty, taking pride in the growth and blossoming of their understanding and accomplishments. Love for the other and their ideas, love for the generations to come. We turn now to Mark Ruff.
Thank you very much, Jack. You're an inspiration.
Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Mark Ruff, and I'm a professor of history at St. Louis University. And at such forums, it's most common for former students and colleagues in one's own home department to offer encomiums, and that my remarks depart markedly from this pattern speaks volumes about Claude's generosity. For his tutelage of me cannot be ascribed to any sort of departmental obligation. I studied under Claude as an undergraduate in my senior year at UB, but not as a political science major. I was a history major intending to pursue a PhD in modern European history. And it was in the summer of 1990 that Claude served as my advisor for what was the equivalent of a senior thesis. It turned into an unwieldy 86-page research paper on the drafting of the preamble to the United Nations Charter. And it was research that had been made possible by an NEH Young Scholar Award and carried out at the UN Archives in New York. And I can remember distinctly our conversations about Jan Christian Smuts, the South African statesman and diplomat, the Dumbarton Oaks Accords, and the emergence of the politics of human rights in the 1940s. I'd like to just share two short stories that illustrate Claude's generosity. In addition to the joy of just intellectual exchange with a man as brilliant as Claude, as I had written it down at the time. I will never forget how after I had wrapped up my thesis, he invited me to a lecture that he was giving at UB to colleagues in the field on the emergence of human rights policy in the 1940s. And in the middle of the lecture that he was giving, there were probably about 60 or 70 people in the room, he proceeded actually to discuss my findings, and interrupting his lecture, turned and pointed to me in order to, as he put it, quote, give credit where credit was due. And as a 21-year-old aspiring scholar, I was both elated but also exceptionally humbled by this incredible gesture. There's one other story. One time we were setting up a meeting and I couldn't attend the time that he had suggested. I mentioned I was giving a piano recital over at Barrett Hall the following week and the day that he had suggested. Well, when I sat down to give the recital, I just looked at who was in attendance, and I noticed that Claude was attending the concert on the second floor of Barrett Hall at UB, something that I think very few other professors would have done. His generosity to me, which later included writing letters of recommendation for national fellowships, PhD programs across the country, became a model for me as my own academic career progressed. And while I can never repay my debt to Claude, I can extend the same generosities to those students, both graduate and undergraduate, as well as colleagues, now under my care here at St. Louis, and help them launch and further their careers. Claude, thank you so much. I remain eternally grateful.
Dankeschön, mein Freund.
And we turn to Harvey Starr as our next speaker.
There we go. You have me? Yes. Thank you, Mark. I was a 16-year-old freshman when I stepped on the Buffalo campus in the fall of 1963. And there's a lot on the CV since then, but there's only one thing I want to mention because it's probably the dearest to my heart. And that was in 2009, I became the first recipient of the department's Distinguished Alumnus Award. And that's the one thing I want to mention. I'm sure I would have known Claude before this, but the first semester of my senior year in 1966, I took his course, The Politics of Developing Nations. So we've known each other for 55 years, first as student teacher, secondly as academic colleagues, but thirdly for me, I've known Claude as a touchstone for all that is things UB political science. Claude knows that in a number of occasions, in a number of places, I've acknowledged how important my education at I've noted how my education at UB was just absolutely foundational for my success in graduate school and into my career. Much of my work, I'm in international relations, much of my work in conflict processes, internal conflict, civil war, protracted social conflict, failed states, had a very, very large component of comparative politics. And the very first exposure to comparative politics and its concepts and what it meant to do comparative research, in fact, was in Claude Welch's course. And I've talked to him about this. I was extraordinarily lucky while I had taken his course on developing nations. I was also taking Theodore Friend's course in history, his 2-semester undergraduate course on South and Southeast Asia. And this, along with courses from Richard Johnson and Les Milbrath in the honors program, Glenn Snyder in IR, was the basis for the success I've had throughout my career. For me, it's really hard to imagine visiting Buffalo, visiting UB, and not being able to see Claude Welch. But I will make sure to visit your room. Thanks. I'd like to turn this over to Philip Stevens.
Thank you very much, Harvey. You mean so much to the discipline and to South Carolina and to me. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Phil Stevens. Excuse me, I retired in 2019 after 48 years in the anthropology department. I'm talking to you from Jensen Beach, Florida, where the temperature is about 60 degrees higher than Buffalo. I'm glad to see so many people that I haven't seen in a few years, and we're all here to celebrate, well, as Jack said, the seminar room, but the namesake of that room, a remarkable scholar and a real exemplary person. I think I knew Claude in 1969 when I was first at UB, but I certainly got to know him and work with him in 1971 when I returned exactly 50 years ago. And that's remarkable to think that it's been that long. As Frank Zargari said in his introduction, Claude's CV is out there, available to everyone. I'm going to look between the lines. Right away, Claude and I got together because we had common interests, primarily in African studies. He and I alternated as chair of African Studies for, it was then the African Studies Committee, as it was called, throughout the 1970s. In that decade, I remember seeing him. He had his own TV program on WBEN, focusing on religion and ethics. And a decade or so later, I don't know how many of you know this, he was a contestant on Jeopardy. And he had a Western New York nation. We were all very proud.
And Lal, can I interrupt, Phil? Lal Goel said that I was right on the final Jeopardy, but that the answer that Alex Trebek stated was wrong. So thank you, Lal.
I think I remember that. And we all proudly shined by the reflected glory, as they say, you know. We sat on several committees, student committees and faculty committees. And right up to his retirement, he and I lectured in each other's classes. We shared some common experiences as well. A love of well-cooked meals, the Chautauqua Institution, Westminster Church, where he and where Jeanette were very active and highly respected. And Claude is still participating even today in Westminster programs by Zoom. And we share the devastating experience of the death of a spouse. I remember, sorry, I didn't know if I should do this. I remember his beloved Nancy, what a beautiful woman. She visited one of my classes at the Main Street campus in the late 1970s, and she brought a contingent of student teachers with her. And they wrote an evaluation of my teaching, which I took to heart, and I cherished her advice. She died, alas, at the end of that decade. And Claude was one of the very first to console me in July 1996 when my wife died very suddenly. He knew that devastation. I got to know his kids pretty well, and of course, his second wife, Jeanette, whom I'm sure all of you knew as well. We respected her scholarship. I had an affinity with her through our interest in comparative religion and also Westminster Church. I didn't participate directly. I think I was busy on that day, but my wife attended their shared honor at St. Joseph's University Catholic Church when they were conferred with the Cardinal Newman Award in 2015 for service to UB and the entire Western New York community. But she too was taken from him, and he had to endure that devastation twice. Through the 50 years, Claude, since my return to UB, I have marveled at two phenomena that this man demonstrates. I've asked myself these questions. One, how does he do so much? And two, how does he remain so calm? Thanks very much. Thanks to Monroe for inviting me to speak.
And thank you, Phil. I know you can say thank you in Latin, but how about Yoruba? I never learned that. Thank you very much for your nice.
Eshegan.
Eshegan.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot my job here. The final speaker, at least as the original schedule says, T.Y. Wang. Are you here?
Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here to honor beloved Dr. Welch. My name is T.Y. Wang from Illinois State University. It's nice to see some of my old professors, Dr. Frank Zachary and Dr. Monroe Eagles. And it has been more than 3 decades. Indeed, more than 3 decades ago, I went to the department as an international student. And the culture shock, the language barrier, not to mention the amount of snow in Buffalo. My wife and I grew up in a subtropical environment. So back then, or prior to our arrival in Buffalo, the only snow that we have ever seen was either in the movie or in a postcard or in our imagination. But our first winter in Buffalo was one of the worst blizzard. So we got all the snow that we missed in our first 20-some years. Dr. Welch has always been a very understanding and caring professor. He encouraged, especially our international students, very much. So I really appreciate it. And most importantly, he always encouraged us in a very subtle way so that we will not be embarrassed. I took many classes with Dr. Welch, and some were held in the 502, in the very room that was dedicated today. And some of the classes, many of you already mentioned, and the politics of developing countries, the African politics, and civil military relations. And in fact, I have this his book, No Farewells to Arms. It's right in front of me. I took from my bookshelf. And Dr. Welch has his autograph, October 6, 1988. So I appreciate this, very intellectually inspiring. But I think I vividly remember that Dr. Welch, back then our office originally was in Baldwin Hall. Then when the Park Hall was built, then we moved to the Park Hall. And your office was originally at the 5th floor. Then later on, I moved down to the 4th floor, and where later on I was a graduate student instructor. My office also at the 4th floor, and I saw a lot of grad students and undergraduate students visit your office. And Dr. Welch has always been very generous in his time. And back then, I just really feel inspired. I told myself, this is the kind of professor I want to be. Probably the most inspiring and most memorable class. It is not African politics. It is not civil military relations. actually is the class prior to my graduation, the 1 credit hour teaching political science. In that class, Dr. Welch asked us to compile a syllabus on a topic of our own choice. Then each one of us will have to structure in a way with a pedagogical reason. We have to justify why we select those readings, why we put the one topic before the other, and the other topic is after the other. And at the end of the semester, Dr. Welch took all of us to one of the classrooms. This very, back then, 1980s, you know, this very advanced classroom in campus. Yeah, at the Main Street campus, and with all the audio and video equipment. And each one of us make a 15 minutes presentation. He taped us, then show on the TV, and all the participants have to provide a critique. To me, personally, that is my capstone, because it forced me to think what I learned in the department. Who am I? What am I? What I have learned, how I structure my knowledge. Then that's how I'm going to present to my students. That was my capstone experience. Dr. Welch is a world-class scholar, and in my mind, he is a teacher scholar. He's brilliant, tireless, and I thank you and congratulate you on your retirement. And someday I'll visit you. And also I hope that you can visit me sometime. Thank you.
I shall. Share, TY.
And thanks to everyone for sharing these remarkable sentiments and testimonials to this remarkable man that's with us. I'd like to now turn to Jory Breslowski, who would like to offer her remarks briefly. And then I have a contribution to read from someone who can't be with us. So Jory, if you're here.
Yeah, thanks for squeezing me in. Hi, I'm Jory. I had the honor of having Claude as a professor in my undergraduate years at UB. And he went on to become a mentor for my senior thesis and many other things, and a friend who always made me feel like family in his home. And I was working on a grant application earlier this week, and the personal essay part of it asked us to reflect on someone who was really formative in our career. And even though it's been a few years since I left UB and I've met so many incredible and brilliant people, it was so automatic for me that I would write about Claude. Before I walked into Claude's human rights class, I was determined to be an intelligence analyst. I grew up in the post 9/11 era. And his class really shook me. There were so many meetings that I left crying and thinking about topics for days. And it really changed the way that I thought about world politics and what we owe one another as human beings. And that was really the point that shifted my career aspirations, that I wanted to dedicate my life to research. And, you know, at the time I adored Claude, and it's only now almost 10 years later that I reflect back on the true gift I had in having Claude as a mentor. The creativity and boldness that he brought to his teaching, the generosity he showed with his time, and just the utter kindness that he showed me and so many other people. So I just wanted to say, Claude, I am so grateful that you have been in my life, and I want you to know what an impact you've had on me, and thank you for everything you've done for me.
Thank you, Jory, and enjoy that lovely summer home.
Thank you so much, Jory. And now I'd like to read a contribution that I've received. This is from, sorry, can you hear me?
You're frozen, Monroe.
Can you hear me now?
There.
Yeah, for some reason, everything broke up there. So thanks for your patience with the technology. If you can hear me, I'll read this contribution. It's from Claude's brother-in-law from his first marriage to Nancy, who we've heard described so eloquently today. So this is from Carl Edwards. My sister met Claude, who went by Ted back in the day, at a freshman mixer at Radcliffe, bracket Harvard, and they almost immediately fell in love. Ted seemed to have an impeccable pedigree. Private school educated, editor of the Harvard Crimson newspaper for 2 years, father and brother of Harvard Medical School graduates, etc. Yet was a really down-to-earth and genuine guy. They married after Nancy's junior year and went off to Oxford, where Ted pursued his PhD in political science. They returned with 2 little girls, and Claude took a position at UB just 90 miles from our home in Rochester, which enabled us to spend several wonderful summers with them at our family cottage in Canandaigua Lake. My mother, who had pretty good instincts, was of the opinion that Ted would probably be drawn to Harvard with all his roots there, and that UB would probably be a stepping stone in his academic career, leading to a professorship at Harvard. It speaks volumes to Claude's loyalty and steadfastness that, to the contrary, he and Nancy made Buffalo and UB their permanent home and never considered options elsewhere. Nancy got her degree, and they both immersed themselves in the university and the community until her premature death in 1979. With his wonderful second wife, Jeanette, Claude and she, if anything, were even more involved in the university community and its activities, as well as in the cultural community of Chautauqua. This demonstrates the excellence of the university, which Claude continued to find challenging and fulfilling throughout his career. And I believe he received as much as he gave. If that's true, Mr. Edwards, that's wonderful, because Claude has given so much to all of us, and the testimonies we've heard today outline only some of the many, many ways in which Claude and his talent and his passion and his civility has enriched.
Frozen again.
And I hope, Claude, it's been as enjoyable for you as it has been for me. And I hope you've enjoyed hearing these remarkable individuals whose lives you've touched in so many meaningful ways express their appreciation to you.
Thank you.
Claude, do you have any last words before I wrap things up?
Well, I'm going to have so much fun looking at the chat comments that came in, and I will send out thank you notes to all those who are able to participate. But guys, give me a weekend to recover from this wonderfully emotional event. Thank you for helping me to remember so many aspects of how we work together. Everything feels much richer. And again, as Monroe emphasized at the start, feel free to write things down if you've been listening and not been one of the speakers, because it will make a continuing contribution to the university, to the department, and indeed to the entire world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claude. Well, let me simply close us off today, thanking you all again for participating in this event. It's been an uplifting one for me. And let me emphasize that the Claude Welch Library and Seminar Room is available for visitation should you find yourselves in Buffalo. We'd love to see you in the department. And we know that by keeping yourselves part of our community, we build on this incredible foundation that Claude has been so instrumental in providing us as a department to continue this sort of the excellence that he has embodied and epitomized in his life. And so thank you again, everyone, for being here today. And God bless, Claude. All the best to you as you have a wonderful, I hope, retirement, stimulating and exciting and active retirement. So thank you all once again for being a part of this.
Thank you very much, everybody. And for those who are still watching.
Wonderful.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
So long.
Thank you.
Claude.
Bye,
Take care,
everybody.
Claude.
Thank you.
Claude,
Yes,
Claude,
Frank.
when you joined the department, you didn't have to take Abe's hat.
No, actually, this was a gift from Jeanette. And I did go ahead and several days on February 12th of a year, I would haul out this box. Let's see, it's from, I'm never good at mirror motion. It's from Knox of New York. And the shield in the center reads, and I can't do the Latin here, and I don't have my glasses on, so, and the light isn't turned down apart from that. Okay. Moveo, what's that? Phil is still on. Moveo, I move, and proficio, and excel. But we'll leave it to the Latinists, okay?
I'd like to say that this book published
yes.
back in 1965 is one of the few books that I have saved. When I retired, I gave away my library to the university library, but few books I saved, and you can see that this book is well used.
Oh, yes.
And I used this in the course that I was teaching on political change and political development.
Yeah.
So maybe I deserve a little bit of part of the royalty that I helped generate. Thank you, Claude. Thank you so much.
And I want to say something to Guo Li, whether or not he's still on. Guo Li, thank you so much for organizing the special test strip for Fred. It means so much, I'm sure, to him, and it will be just great to see that, out on the web whenever that happens. Thank you, T.Y. Sorry, thank you, Guo Li.
Thank you, Dr. Welch.
I'll echo that sentiment. These are all so important. We have so much to celebrate as a department. We've been the beneficiary of such intellectual. Reflect on that is truly uplifting. So thank you all.
Okay, you're in charge. You can turn us off and put us all on mute.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting now, but thanks. Okay, so long. Take care, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, Claude.
Okay.